Hello, and welcome to today's Shorts Roundtable. I'm Paul Sloop, the short films programming manager for the Cleveland International Film Festival, or as most of you know me, as the Shorts Guy. I want to take a moment here to offer special thanks to PNC for sponsoring our Filmmaker Conversations content throughout the festival. On today's roundtable, we'll be joined by filmmakers from some of the short films included in Short Films Program 3. With that in mind, allow me to welcome our guests to today's conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Hi there.
Thank you all so much for being here. To get us started, I'd like to ask each of you to take a moment to introduce yourself, your film, your role on the film, and where you're calling us from today. Let's start with Brian.
Hi, my name's Brian McQuay from Vancouver, Canada. I was the writer and director for the short Tsunami Falls.
Claudia Michelle.
Hello, my name is Claudia Di Lascia, and I'm the writer and the co-director of Going Down Alone.
Hi, my name is Michele Bizzi. I'm co-director of Going Down Alone, which in Italian translates to Sole in Discesa, and we are a writer, director, and producer team from Milan, Italy.
Emanuele Daga, director and writer of Green Luck, calling from Los Angeles.
I am Dylan Spieg, and I worked on Mrs. Taylor's Show and Tell, and I was the animator and illustrator.
Hello, my name is Victor Dean. I am calling from Los Angeles. I am the director and writer of Mrs. Taylor's Show and Tell, A Prince Story.
Hi there, my name is Gábor Holtai. I'm the director of the short film Second Round, and I'm calling from Budapest, Hungary.
Hi, I'm Attila Veres. I'm the writer of the short film Second Round, also calling from Budapest, Hungary.
Thank you all so much for being here. One of the silver linings of not being in person, which we love being in person, is that we can have so many of our filmmakers join us and be introduced and meet our audience. So allow me to ask the first question of all of you. It's the one we always try to address because our audience always wants to know what was the inspiration or what led to the making of your film, or in the alternative, what led you to becoming involved in the making of your film? Again, we'll start with Brian.
So I made this film. Basically, there's a Directors Guild of Canada had a competition for a $30,000 grant for emerging filmmakers, which I won. And it was a story that basically I was kind of bored in the office and came up with a cool title, wrote a tagline of what that would be. And after a couple of them, this one stuck. And I thought it'd be a really nice story to kind of tell a story where the protagonist doesn't necessarily have to be the person there. It's kind of telling a story that every person could relate to. And I'm kind of trying to tell their story of what would happen if you're about to die and what your final thoughts would be.
Yeah. Very good. Claudia Michelle.
Hi, I talk as the writer of the film. I was searching, and as a woman, because the film is talking about violence against women, I was searching for a movie that could be showed and watched by every ages, at every ages, and I didn't find it. So at a certain point, I said, I want to write something that could be understandable from a kid to an old woman, and I want that violence could be very tough, could be tangible, but not rude, not rough, not. I don't want to see the violence inside this film. So I set this movie. I started to find for fundings, and I found this perfect public fund from MIBACT in Italy, and it was like perfect for it because it was for a short movie that narrated violence against women, and I started to set this story in a symbolic elevator in which a woman retraces her life and meets all the men who have abused her physically or psychologically. Of course, we live in a subjective. I don't know if you're going to see the movie after this speech. In a point of view through the eyes. So you live through the eyes of the protagonist and the action symbols and violence against all women. And it could be watched by also a kid, right?
Yes, I mean, from my own point of view, I read the script and I fell in love with it. I love that it was non-narrative. It's basically a series of symbols and metaphors, so it can talk to everybody, and it makes you use your head, but it also hits you in the belly, as we say in Italy. We say it hits you in your belly, meaning that you can feel the emotions of that. It's a POV shot, so it's supposed to make everybody feel like a woman who is suffering from a kind of abuse.
It definitely did its job, and as a father of 6 daughters, I was extra sensitively touched by your film. It was really quite powerful. Emmanuel?
Hi. I had a friend who introduced me to a cinematographer who was looking for a director to shoot her thesis. And also, she was looking for a story. So I always have shorts ready to be shot. I always look for a nice way and cheap way to shoot shorts. And so I had this in my closet in a way, and we decided to shoot it together with a low budget because it was a thesis for the New York Film Academy as a thesis, and so we went for it, and we loved the ride, and we enjoyed it very much.
Very funny film. Dylan?
All right, yeah. Victor and I went to the same high school, and I do most of what I do is comic books and storyboards for like TV commercials. And when the COVID hit, I learned to do animation. I just want to learn all the programs since I was paying for the whole Adobe suite. And my friend who went to high school with us said, "Hey, do you know Victor from high school?" And we never met in high school.
Yeah, we never did.
We had friends, and they were like, they put us in contact. And it's funny because we know all the same people, but some reason we
don't
never
know
met.
each other.
Yes, we've never met in person. And he had a good pitch, and I really liked it, and so it was really fun to work on. I loved it.
Yeah, I met Prince back in 2001. And it was a crazy encounter. And I've always wanted to shoot it as a director. And but I always was like, hey, I don't want to get a person to, impersonate or play Prince. Who, you can't do that. So my wife, who is the executive producer, she says, well, why don't you get it animated? So I just put out a feeler on Facebook, and my friend Justin got me in touch with Dylan. And I told Dylan the whole story of how I met Prince and how it was just this crazy, funny encounter. And he, I think maybe about 3 or 4 hours later, he started sending me storyboard stuff. And I hadn't even paid him yet. So we just had, the chemistry just was immediate. Yeah. And that's pretty much how the whole thing started. And then being part of COVID, it was just perfect for us to just, work remotely doing animation.
I had nothing else going on.
So that's such a funny story. Yeah. Really a fun ride. The story be told and watch it that way. Gabor.
Yeah. Whoa. Well, our story started with a beer, basically. We had already done a couple of movies together, 3 shorts, and so we were searching for the next one. And I don't know if you know about the situation in Eastern Europe, but we've got sort of like right-wing extremism going on, a bit of like an autocrat kind of political system. So we were searching for ways to kind of express that or like talk about that without saying that out loud, like in the open, because then we wouldn't be able to get state money, because they just wouldn't like to be criticized. And so over this beer, we had found this story, or we came up with this thing, which kind of talks about how the bodies and like people are owned by the state, and how our lives are kind of run by the state, and we have to always like apply for stuff to the state in order to live. And so we have just kind of written this movie to express that, and to talk about it without the money givers realizing that, and we kind of succeeded.
And it was really interesting because when Attila wrote the script, and it was maybe 3 years ago or something like that, it was much more dystopian and much more, so to say, far-fetched as it is today. So,
practically it is now realism. Like, this,
Yeah.
like even further out stuff happens in Poland.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yes, it had that 1984 kind of feel to it. It did the job for sure. And yes, the timing was dead on. So for everyone, the second question I'd like to ask you all is to take a moment to consider this. If there was one thing you'd want our audience to know about the making of your film, or one story that you'd like to share about something that happened during the making of your film, what would that story be? And again, we'll start with you, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd probably talk about our motocross racing. We had, through my DP Peter, connection with Peacemaker Films, and they have all the fun toys. And they came out, and we had professional motocross racers, drones. We had a Warthog, which is basically a 4-person dune buggy with an Ultimate arm on it. And it was something I'd personally never done before as a director, and it was an amazing opportunity. But it's one of those neat things. As a director, you like to think that you're kind of in charge, and sometimes you get lucky where you have all these incredible film technicians and filmmakers around you that you basically almost stand back a little bit and let it happen. And we were having so much fun. The drone captain, he had just gotten his license, so they were kind of bringing him out to train him. And we were shooting anamorphic lenses, like vintage lenses, so a big package. And I think we ended up shooting down to our last 4 seconds of our card. And we were sitting there, we were done. We had about 2 or 3 minutes left in the card, and the DP goes, I just let him have some fun. So we went on a tighter lens, did some stuff, and actually some of the most amazing shots that actually made in the film were actually done in that last couple of minutes, where we just burned our card right down the last 4 seconds and kind of called it a day. And so, yeah, it was absolutely incredible experience. And even for a short, I think people, like, when they think of short films, they think about a bunch of students running around with a camera trying to go guerrilla and hope that they don't get caught with a permit. And yeah, I'm sure, like, when you see a lot of these films, like, the amount of effort and work that really does go into them, and the level of professionalism that I think probably most filmmakers put into it is absolutely incredible. It's at the same level as like a feature film, minus Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, no, so true. I am very passionate about short films. I've been doing this for 18 years, and you got the talent that shows up in short films definitely rivals everything we see in feature films, no question.
Yeah, I've done a few and I've worked on a lot, and we're still running crews of sometimes 60, 70 people to do a short film, which I'm working on Hallmark movies right now, and we run a crew of about 80. So it's about the same size to do a Hallmark movie that it takes to sometimes do some of these shorts.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Claudia and Michelle.
Well, there were a lot of funny things happening on set, but one of the best, I guess, it's like a behind the scenes thing. Well, generally in our duo, I'm directing and Claudia is producing, but for this specific story, we thought that we had to have like a woman's point of view also into direction. So we decided to direct it together. And I remember that the challenges were a lot. For instance, Claudia was like saying it's all a POV shot. It has to be always a POV shot. But we have to see that the protagonist is becoming younger at every scene. So how are we going to do that? If it's a POV shot, how are we going to see her? And like the obvious answer was she should look at herself in the mirror. So we used the old trick of we built two identical elevators, and instead of a mirror, there was a hole, so that we would have the crew in one elevator and the actors in the other one, so that we could create some sequences where the protagonist is turning around and looking at herself in the mirror, so that we can see that she's becoming younger and younger. And the funny thing is that we shot like most of the sequences with a real mirror inside the elevator, and then we took it off. And so as actors came in, they had a moment where they were like, wow, why I can't see myself in the mirror. What's happening? It was very funny at the moment. And we shot for 3 days, so it was very funny to see everybody trying to get in, and how your brain actually malfunctions when you're supposed to see a mirror and there's no mirror. It was funny to see that.
Gotcha. Emmanuel.
I also have an elevator story. During the production of the movie, anyway, we had a lot of fun because there were many instances in which we could laugh and enjoy what we were doing, from the pigeon poo to figure it out how to make it fold right in the on the shoulder. But one thing that made us a little bit worried, but also at the end of the day made us laugh, was the fact that we didn't have full access to the elevator. I mean, we could use it, but not to go up and down, because it was inside a building that first said yes, then said no. And so what we had to do that scene. And the poor PA had to basically block be inside the elevator, laying down, and at each take go up and down. But the elevator was so fast that at a certain point he said, "Wait a second, I'm dizzy." So it was at the end of the day a fun story and a fun set overall.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think I would say that the funniest part to me, the whole thing, was that me and Victor, we worked on this. It's just two guys making it. So it's different than I work on TV commercials and usually 30 people there for to shoot two people on a couch. So it was very interesting because I was learning the program as we were making it. So I'm a good illustrator and I know how to draw and I know how to frame things, but I had never made the stuff move really in that capacity. So it was pretty stressful. And also working remotely, sometimes, when you do an animation, I would work on something for 6 hours and then, you send it to Victor and then he'd be like, okay, could we do this a little bit different? You'd be like, no, but yeah. So our workflow got really good though. By the end, we knew exactly how to do it. I was like, I'm going to send him. So it was the storyboarding definitely came in very strong. That we figured it out really quickly how to do it and how not to do it.
Yeah. To piggyback on Dylan, I would have to say it was like, you would want to have something specifically done a certain way in your brain, and you kind of try to, convey that remotely. And then he would send me something, and then I would be like, babe, like my wife, because she was the executive producer, she was like, well, you need to, be more clear about what you want to do since you're directing this. And I mean, I've directed, live action stuff, but I had never done anything animated. So it just worked out very, very well. But with me and him going back and forth, it was just like, and then Dylan would go dark for about an hour just to get himself together.
Just drawing it. But we never really got nasty because we both knew that this was the first time we'd ever done it. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
So, but it worked out great.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. Gabor and Attila.
Yes. So, we shoot a dystopian fiction, and there is a certain bribery scene in the short film, and it was really strange and funny in a way when we shot that scene. From all the crew and the cast, everyone at one point came to me and said, "Oh my God, my first bribery attempt was just like that." All in the crew and the cast, everyone had this common, collective experience when they try to bribe someone, some representative of the state or something like that. And it was such a strange feeling that, we are doing this dystopian fiction, but everyone has some elements in their lives that are just, reality.
Oh, wow.
And also, fun fact that our actress was pregnant during the shoot, but we did not know it, and I believe neither did she.
Wow.
Well, the rest of you all need to see the film to know how relevant that is. So allow me, hey, thank you all so very much for joining us. On behalf of everyone at the festival, we really appreciate you taking the time for joining us here for this roundtable today. In addition, we also have to thank you, our audience, for joining us for today's Shorts Roundtable. We wouldn't be here without your ongoing support to bring film home. We hope you'll consider supporting our challenge match again this year, presented by Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, to support the future of our festival. Our goal is to reach $145,000 this year, and we are so grateful in advance for any amount you're able to contribute. To make a donation or purchase tickets or check out our full schedule of filmmaker conversations, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. With that, please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here again very soon.